Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our UDI Okanagan annual general meeting, quick part, and then of course a webinar to follow for October 21st. Thanks for everybody for attending. I'm just going to give another few seconds here as I see more participants are logging in, which is great. So I will be doing a very brief annual general meeting for the 2021 year and the year upcoming before we get into our webinar. So it shouldn't take very long at all. So I appreciate your patience. Something, of course, that we have to do, but we get to share a little bit about the year that was and the year ahead. So I'm going to, as other people are logging in, I'm just going to get us started with our AGM. So in terms of the year in review, of course, this has been a very interesting year due to COVID-19. Since kind of April of 2020, the Okanagan chapter has certainly tried to thrive and pivot to continue to add value to our membership. We've provided some high quality professional development opportunities by transitioning to webinars in the place of our in-person lunches. And we've actually hosted since April 1st, 14 different webinars since in-person events were ended. We've increased the frequency of our e-newsletters for sharing industry information and UDI activities. And our policy and advocacy work has continued, and our membership has actually even grown slightly to 155 members now for UDI Okanagan. So that's great. We appreciate your support. I've listed just a little bit of some of the policy work that we've done as an industry on the next couple of slides. Also, we'll let you know that UDI Okanagan is a member of the parent chapter of UDI Pacific based in the Lower Mainland. There's also the Capital Region on the island and the Fraser Valley region. And we all share mutual interest in advocating at a provincial level as well through various housing ministries and the like through UDI Pacific. As far as policy initiatives, I'm not going to get into a great level of detail. We do share these in our e-newsletters for those of you that are more interested in some of these technical areas. I would like to just highlight, though, some significant consultation effort that's gone on with many UDI members in consultation with city staff on the Kelowna OCP 2040 review. And that's been a very successful process thus far. And many of you will know that the OCP is going to a public hearing next Tuesday, October 26th, I believe it is. And UDI has actually submitted correspondence to Mayor and Council as part of that public hearing process for some final feedback. In particular, we're encouraging, obviously, the approval of the OCP, but wanting a strong commitment to implementation strategies that can help enact the policies in the OCP and achieve many of the shared visions that we have for the development of Kelowna over the next 20 years. So here's some policy initiatives that we worked through with various municipalities, just sort of a highlight. This past year, so this would have been since our last AGM, we've had a little bit of change on our board members membership, our board membership. We've had 3 outgoing board members, Bob Evans, WSP, Bob Brown, Canadian Western Bank, and Mary Lapointe with Strategic Real Estate Development Consulting. We've shared this with them, of course, from a board level, but we're very appreciative of the work that they've done on the board to date, and certainly for a number of years. We also had 2 incoming board members since our last AGM. That includes Dave McInerney from Stober Group and John Downs, who's our U40 rep now from Live Edge Okanagan Builders. I did want to take a moment, like we do at our AGMs, just to kind of confirm who our board members are, and that's made up of our executive committee, which includes myself as chair, Rich Treffel from Troika as our past chair, treasurer Kevin Santos from Grant Thornton, who you'll be hearing from in just a little bit. There's also 2 board appointees on our executive committee, Andrew Gaucher with McKinley Beach and Andrew Bruce from Calcan Investments. The rest of the board members at large include this list. I'll just go with the names for this one for the sake of time. So we have Matt Cameron, Brad Cronquist, Kevin Edgecombe, Sean Hughes, Kevin Johnson, Kim McKechnie, Rick Miller, John Morrison, and Dominic Petroia. as well as Ben Rawlinson, David Sargent, Gail Temple, and Shane Warman. Continued thanks for the efforts of the board members in helping support UDI. It's a volunteer effort, so we thank you for that. And I certainly want to support all of those, both board members and otherwise, that are working on UDI committees. This is really where the rubber meets the road for a lot of UDI's work, advocating for our industry on a number of fronts. I'm not going to list all of these, but essentially they're made up of municipal liaison committees, technical review committees, or policies specific to individual items such as DCCs or official community plan work, as I've mentioned, as well as various events that we do throughout the year. So a number of different committees, some of them more active than others, but of course, if you're interested in any of these committees, you can reach out to Jennifer at the UDI office to learn more. Okay, so we are now going to move to a brief financial report from our treasurer, Kevin Santos. I'll invite Kevin to join. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Luke, can you hear me okay?
You bet. I'll just move through a couple of your slides.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks Luke for opening up the AGM. I'll just spend a couple minutes just reviewing our financials for the year ended March 31st, 2021. As you can imagine, it's been an interesting year in most industries, and but yet our balance sheet still very strong, mainly due to two items. One being our reserve from prior years, and two being we did qualify under the UDI Pacific umbrella for a few of the COVID-related government grants. So at the end of the year, our member reserve is sitting just under the $200,000 mark, with $130,000 of it being in cash. If you want to flip to the next slide, Luke. So our income statement, and it's probably quite small there, but our income statement was quite straightforward this year. So really, our main revenue source was from memberships. You'll see an increase in memberships. It wasn't because of a significant increase in members. We did, Luke touched on it earlier, but what UDI Pacific did is they waived our $15,000 membership fee to UDI Pacific during the year. So we were able to keep that. And we were also able to hold a few webinars, and not that we had entry fees, we did have some revenue from sponsorships. So, and you can see there, we did qualify for about $29,000 in CEWS funding through the UDI Pacific umbrella. From an expense perspective, we did cut most of our expenses down to our fixed expenses. And at the end of the day, we did come in above budget. We did budget actually for a small loss, but we were able to, between the $15,000 rebate from UDI Pacific and the CEWS, and also some luncheons, we did end up coming in with a revenue over expenses of $46,000. So quite healthy considering everything that was going on. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to the UDI office, to myself or Jennifer. Thanks, Luke.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Kevin. Thanks as always for the work that you do as treasurer, which has been for quite a few years now. So very much appreciated. And so that, I believe, is the completion of our AGM. Thanks for everyone for sticking into the required part of the business today. Before we move to our webinar, I just want to again express our thanks to all of the members to continuing to support UDI over the past year. It's been obviously a really interesting time for an organization like ours. We've had to make changes to the way we've done business, certainly with events and so on. We just want to thank you for continuing to see the value in UDI's work that we do on behalf of the industry, and your continued support. So without further ado, for the part that I'm sure the majority of the participants have actually logged in for, which is today's webinar. So today's webinar is titled, "There's Only Been One Summer Like This One." You can probably guess which summer that is. Of course, it's hosted, presented by Scott Brown, CEO of Epic Real Estate Solutions. So just before we get into that and introduce our sponsors, I just want to remind everybody that there is, as always in our webinars, a Q&A portion that I'll help facilitate with Scott at the end of the program. We might even take some questions during the presentation. So please use that Q&A function within Zoom here. And then we'll go from there. That'll be at the end of the presentation. And I'll also remind everybody that this will be recorded. We'll be able to share this information to our membership after the webinar. So today, of course, I want to acknowledge our executive co-sponsors for this event, Kirchhoff Construction and Epic Real Estate Solutions. Certainly, we can't do these events without our sponsors, so thank you for that. First, with Kirchhoff Construction. So for over 53 years, Kirchhoff Construction has been orchestrating developments that shape our communities, building quality multifamily residential and commercial spaces that stand the test of time, such as 1 Water Street, 1151 Sunset, and the Packing District in Kelowna. And they continue to hold to their commitment to excellence, innovation, integrity, and fairness, and above all else, client satisfaction. And they appreciate the trades, suppliers, and workers that team up with them to build, as they can't do what they do without their support, talent, and dedication. We also have Epic Real Estate Solutions as our co-sponsor. And Epic Real Estate Solutions is an Okanagan-based real estate sales and marketing firm with over 60 years of collective experience, successfully selling multifamily projects, master plan communities, and resort developments locally and across the country. Epic offers a comprehensive range of services to its development partners, from providing strategic planning advice and market intelligence to creating best-in-class sales and marketing programs that deliver exceptional results. You have a dream, let's make it epic. So now I'm going to call on one of the sponsor representatives, Leonard Kirchhoff, who will then also introduce Shane from Epic. Leonard.
Thanks, Luke. Hear me okay?
Yeah, you bet.
So thanks for the introduction. There has only been one summer like this one. I think this is certainly a timely topic. A lot of things that have happened this summer. I'm looking forward to learning more about the market value escalations from Scott Brown from 5th Avenue. With the first tower of our signature Kelowna project, 1 Water Street, completing this summer, it is very interesting to us to see the significant increase in value since we commenced pre-sales in the fall of 2017, with resale listings and sales ranging and resales ranging from 30% to 50% higher than our original prices in 2017. And yet, from our perspective, there are certainly significant challenges facing our industry. Global supply chain issues, material supply shortages, labor shortages are real issues. And the rising value of homes, which has already blown through the ceiling of affordability, is still only just covering the projected increases in cost, leaving us developers with very thin margins and high risks. Scott and I have regular debates. I tell him he needs to sell for higher prices, and he tells me that I need to build it cheaper. He can't sell it for more because we are already in hugely uncharted territories of pricing escalation. And we can't build cheaper when trades and suppliers don't know if they can get the materials and labor to build the projects. A quick look at the 12-month lumber pricing index will give some indication of market volatility we face. It looks like the Rocky Mountain skyline. So I'm sticking with my argument that we need market values to continue to escalate if we have a hope of getting new pre-sale projects off the ground moving forward into 2022. Without further comments, let's hear from Shane Stiles, Senior Vice President of Epic Real Estate Marketing, co-sponsor with Kirchhoff for this AGM and webinar.
Thanks very much, Leonard. Appreciate that introduction. At Epic here, we're proud to be members of UDI and appreciate the opportunity to sponsor today's presentation. I'm just going to share a little bit about the past year at Epic and why we're frankly very excited about the potential for the future and the region as a whole. Some of you may know, but some don't, that I officially joined Epic on December 1st, 2020. So I'm just coming up on my 1-year anniversary. And it has been quite a year at Epic. I met with my team in the spring 2021, and I said, okay, here's our theme words for the year. Buckle up. This was the message that I delivered because the forecast was that we were about to experience the summer like no other. starting early in 2021, and just to give you an idea, we grew our team in the first 4 months of 2021 by 300%. To ramp up for all the exciting work that we had coming in front of us. We were focused on 7 key projects throughout the region, stretching from Lake Country at Lakestone down to Summerland. We were representing mid-rise wood frame, mid-rise concrete and steel, concrete high-rise, and some detached product, and some paired duplexes, waterfront duplexes. So across the board. The team that we have put together and growing, we've got a really amazing group of great minds, and we love working alongside our development partners to do amazing things with them. It's been a busy year. I'm going to tell you, it's been a little bit crazy, and we all worked really freaking hard, but we really have a super dedicated crew. Just to give you an idea, I'm going to just share some numbers with you about some of the things that we've done this year, to give you an idea where Epic's been and what we've been able to achieve along with our development partners. Take Zara at Lakestone. Zara at Lakestone is 86 mid-rise condos built in steel and concrete. We achieved well over $700 a foot blended average. We have 4 homes remaining today. We started sales in August. We took Edgecomb's latest sold project. They're so successful with that brand, and we sold that project out in Rutland in just over a year, over the course of the last year. We took on the inventory at Solstice Tower Ranch. Now, that's an interesting play. It's brand new detached homes on a monthly paid land lease, a product type that we actually like quite a bit. We've sold those homes at well over $700,000 with a monthly land lease over $700 a month. Very interesting product. Lakeview Village, West Kelowna, 6-story wood frame, blended average over 700 a foot. That project is 2 phases. We brought our first phase out in July, sold it out in the first few weeks, and then brought the second phase out, accelerated it, brought it out at the end of August. We have 7 homes left of 48 in that phase. So again, really excited about that project. And then we put a bow on our season with the launch of Movala, really our landmark project of the summertime. Architecturally significant, stunning project. We brought that to market a few weeks ago for the first phase, which is a 10-story building. We've sold 80% of it at a blended price per square foot of about $990. So again, setting records across all those projects. We have one final one to come, Lake House in Summerland this summer. It's 45 waterfront homes, detached and semi-detached. And that one's looking to be as successful as all these projects as well in the next couple of weeks. So overall, for the future, we see 2022 being equally strong to 2021. We're a little bit cautious on the price ceilings. We just want to be careful with that. Developers that are really dialed down on their land purchase and their costing, I think, are going to win the day. But I'll use an anecdote that is really telling, I think, for our marketplace. They just closed on the East Tower at One Water. There's 228 homes in that project. There are currently only 20 current resales. And as Leonard alluded to, they have realized significant appreciation. The fact that there's only 20 current resales out of 228 homes that have all gone up significantly in value tells me that all those owners love living here, love owning here, love keeping an asset, a rental asset in this marketplace. And that tells me a lot about what the future looks like. So yeah, we're very excited about 2022. I expect that we'll grow our personal Epic business by about 50 to 100%. We'll probably double what we did this year. So that being said, it's been a pleasure to sponsor today's event again. And I'm happy to introduce our speaker today, our company's CEO. I consider him a good friend. He's one of my key mentors in life, Mr. Scott Brown. Take it away, Scott.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just get my camera going here. Hang on a second. There we go. Good afternoon. Thank you, Shane. I get asked to do these things a fair bit. I've been involved in the industry for about 30 years. I look pretty good for a 90-year-old. I do need to get an older, a newer photo updated. But I'm really was excited about this one because it has been quite the year. And, just Shane, on that note, I think it's interesting to see that, I was thinking about our friend and why we both kind of have been thrust into the leadership position with Epic. And I'm grateful you joined us. You've gone from 3 employees a year ago, July, when Mark passed away in June and we had to step in, to over 24 people. And you've had a number of people that I have a relationship and you've had a relationship with us compelled to join your team and have really delivered for you. So I think I can speak for our friend Mark in saying he'd be really proud of you. So today's talk is referred to as "There's only been one summer like this one." I know somebody's thinking, okay, well, that's pretty obvious. It is 2021. And of course, each summer is unique. And while each summer is unique, not only in terms of the Okanagan, but I also play a leadership role in the other 4 major regions of British Columbia, both as a CEO of another business and as an executive director of 2, so cover the province. And it has been unprecedented what has occurred across the province in 2021. I'm going to focus on, obviously, the Okanagan today and this whole idea of never been one summer like this one, but I am going to put at times some regional context in it. I'll give you one example. Our business in the Fraser Fifth Avenue. Normally the Okanagan, of course, is busy in the summer, but in the Fraser Valley, we did some things this year that I have never seen done before. Some of them we predicted would happen, but not in the summer, and some happened in the summer. Our team said to me on the first long weekend, normally we shut down in the Fraser Valley on the long weekend. There's no realtors around, there's no investors. They said, this database has grown so quick, I think we can actually open sales on the Canada Day long weekend. Bang, they open up sales. Get off to great momentum, pricing, everything like that over the next week to 2 weeks, essentially sell out a building. August long weekend comes around. Same thing. They said, guys, nobody's going anywhere. Some people are going the Okanagan. We can do it again. We did it again with a different project and again. And now I'm sitting here in Victoria today, and we're about to launch the first high-rise in Victoria in some time out at Bear Mountain. And the demand of 5,000 people, it feels a lot more like Kelowna than it does Vancouver. But the Victoria market probably was more skeptical of pre-sales and has only really bounced back to being able to absorb quickly recently, whereas Kelowna really started with Sunset. So I'm going to go through, and our commitment to you, as always, I'm just trying to see why my slides won't advance. There we go. So my purpose today is essentially to inform and share some information, and it's one perspective. It's our perspective and a corporate one, and want to also preview the data that we're going to share, because we made a commitment 2 editions ago, twice a year, to share with you, and that a report we fund with New Real Estate that tries to present a perspective on what's happening in the Okanagan region and by neighborhood with respect to new multifamily sales. Because I'll remind you, 90% of the time we sell stuff and it's not on MLS. So you have to go find that data, because we're not resale. Developers don't typically put all of the inventory and new development on MLS. So I want to preview that, and everybody on this call will get they'll get the copy of the On the Mark in the next day or so by email, and then it'll go out to our general databases later. I want to share. I do want to stimulate some thinking about next year, and I don't think that we're going to find that this is going to, as much as it's been a crazy summer and there is only one, I've seen so many things happen that are partly due to continuation of COVID issues. Market demand, just acceleration demand from outside the region. I do think, and I am optimistic about next summer, I don't think we're going to have a negative kind of Halloween theme for next summer of, hey, I know what you did last summer. What have you done for me lately? So we'll talk about that. But overall, here's the market. So, one of the things I like about creating our report is it creates us accountable. And in Vancouver, I remember saying about 10 years ago on the report I create there, that downtown was at 600 a square foot for high rise in Vancouver. And I said it easily should be 1,000 and probably will go well beyond that. And I got laughed at. And within 18 months, it was over 1,000. I said that Surrey City Center in Fraser Valley was going to go to probably 900 to 1,000. It's there now. And Kelowna will talk about that. But we did in this report say a few things last time we talked. And we said, look, last winter, was an unbelievable winter. The summer was okay coming out of COVID, but the winter had 500 sales, seasonality was blown up, everything like that. And we were shocked, but we said, look, you know, that was more sales last winter than there was in summer of 2020. This year, the summer though, 2.5 times that number, or 1,324 pre-sales were sold in the spring and summer in Greater Kelowna, including Lake Country. 1324. When you throw Lake Country in, it goes up to 1416. And then if you look at what's happening in the region in terms of resales, you've got over 1,000 newer multifamily, so 10-year and newer multifamily sales. So as multifamily developers, right, it's significant growth in the market. And this market is now on par with, you know, numbers wise with significant neighborhoods in larger centers in Canada with the volume it's generating in a half-year period, albeit a peak one. Again, everybody's talked about it, and we're going to throw it out there. Significant upward pressure on pricing, and that's due in part to actual and projected construction costs, and of course, a lack of supply. So what's going on? We projected, the last time we talked, that 750 to 1,000 units of concrete would be absorbed this year at an average price of $800 a square foot. In this quarter alone, we were very close to that, but in the year we will hit that target, but the average price per square foot number was low. We talked about larger inventory nearing completion and the end user being more active than in 2020. And in 2020, most of the primary offerings like One Water Street weren't completed. So you were post your pre-sale people and you were trying to get within people wanting to buy within 12 months of occupancy. That happened this summer. The end user is present. That's a very, very important thing we'll talk more about later. There is accelerated interest in development from outside the region, from developers in particular, but also in particular from consumers as far east as Ontario. Early in the spring in our early sales from some of the projects, we had more buyers interest from Ontario than I've ever seen. So that was one of those, there's only one summer like this summer facts. Immigration acceleration never happened because we didn't open the doors to our border, but folks, it's coming. And personal circumstances, lifestyle choices are growing the region. And I'll talk more about that when we talk a little bit about, well, maybe I'll talk about it now. What did COVID do? So I've been following this for a while and it did a lot of things, and I wish we could stop talking about it. And we know, at least we don't talk about waves anymore because, you know, it's like, gets depressing. But what COVID did, consumer behavior is fascinating. What COVID did about, let's just say hypothetically that 10% of the people in our country or in the world each year look at their housing and assess their situation and determine whether there's and express a degree of dissatisfaction that caused them to take action. And then investors are a different category, but they tend to do the same around opportunity. What COVID did, by all of us being forced to stay home, in my opinion, was caused an accelerated number of people to question their satisfaction with their housing, but more importantly, with where that house is and how they live. And the Okanagan has benefited from that. And I do not believe that is only a short-term effect. We talked about it's not 2000s, don't freak out. It's, you know, probably closer to 2016 when you look at the stats, except for they're much stronger in Kelowna, but across BC. But I haven't seen crazy levels of speculators, and I don't call investors who can complete speculators or flippers, but we do need to keep an eye on that because that's not an added level of inflation that we need. Especially on the land side. I have an issue with land speculation if you don't add value to it or hold it for a year. I think it's causing additional issues for real developers. And we haven't seen that in Kelowna a whole lot or in the Okanagan, but I sense it's coming. Lastly, we talked about last year that BC residents would rediscover the beauty in their own backyard and they'd want to relocate, and that definitely is happening. And the retirement wave of pre-retirement buying is just still getting started, partly because the boomers got a little freaked about Freedom 55 and change it to Freedom 65, maybe 70. But with the aging of the population and evidence, we think it's things that like being involved in solstice. Get ready, folks. We're going to get a lot grayer, both in Victoria and in Kelowna in the next probably 5 to 10 years. And then the big question I added to this one was, I do believe the sales affected the impact, right? The fires impacted some of our sales later in the month with consumers not necessarily, you know, a little bit freaked about is this wildfire thing something that's going to be with us every summer and scare me? And And I do think that this market was incredibly heated, but I do think the fires and the smoke in the east did actually concern it. So what would these volumes been like if we didn't have the smoky August we had? Going through, I'm going to talk to you each about product types. So, as I mentioned, 635 high rises, figured swelled quite a bit from the prior year, compared to 129 sales in our last half year survey. 106 units a month roughly absorbing compared to 21. Significant success for pre-sale campaigns, Water Street Park, Water Street by the Park, you know, Aqua, Movala. I would add Caban to that, but that's under the low rise section, and or wood frame, not concrete. And again, standing inventory, other than 18 units at One Water Street, there's really not any standing inventory of high rise. That's 18 units in the West Tower out of over 400. Pretty remarkable. What's happening then on the low rise side? And again, my screen does not want to cooperate. Okay, there we go. So high rise, One Water Street. So we completed the first tower. Very little completion issues in terms of people not being able to, you know, complete. That's a positive. Surprisingly, as I talked about it, we had a number of people transfer to larger homes in the building, and unprecedented. No summer like this summer, never seen that before. About 40 million in inventory sales generated, an average of $1 million per unit, and 1,600 square foot in size, over $1,000 a square foot. That's putting you on par with Victoria, high rise downtown, and White Rock, or places, seaside communities in BC. Pretty remarkable. West Tower, 18 homes. East Tower only has a $12 million penthouse. That $1 million to $2 million demand is a really encouraging sign for the market that there are end users here, because an investor's not buying a $3 million condominium. And again, what surprised us as well is we monitor, and we expected maybe 20, 30% of the homes to hit the resale market. Just 25 units at One Water Street were relisted, and so far 20 of them remain on the market. And that's probably because they're looking for significant profit taking, but it's a relatively small number of resales. Here's a little grid I put together just to look, and this is sort of approximation based on how people perform some significant high rises. So you had Aqua led the way, 154 sales, average size 76. They were pushing 994, pretty high price per square foot. Caban, Water Street in the Park comes out, higher volume, lower price point, slightly larger unit size than Aqua, 881 a square foot. Interesting. Then you look at Caban comes out, 116, larger average unit size, 840 a price per square foot. And the recent one for Stober, as of yesterday, 87 sales in Movala. Average unit size is slightly larger, but a little bit smaller than Caban. Almost $1,000 a square foot again. But look at that. It's almost 170 some square feet bigger than the average at Aqua, and almost the same price. So very interesting. See what's going on there. Let's switch to the low-rise segment. So very strong segment, represents about 36% of the market. What you're seeing with this high-rise pricing now is that there's a flight. Low-rise becomes the affordable option near and around these locations. 482 sales. That 36 is roughly what it is in Metro Vancouver for low-rise right now. So interesting kind of pattern correlation. You got 482 sales, was about an average of 80 per month. And again, low rise segment, you know, current inventory is half, down to 75 units. There's more coming, and it's needed at different nodes. You know, Abode, Caban, Lakeview Village, 15% of the 8 of the sales there. You know, Seoul, Rutland, Coston selling out. Rapid price appreciation in Lake Country, Lakeview Village. I love the Zara name. Everybody's like, well, who's the marketers and why do they name these things? And that's goofy. We had another name I hated for that project. And then our developer's niece passed away suddenly, and her name was Zara, and we named the project. And he loves when we talk about this project. Every time he hears her name, it warms his heart. So there is something sometimes into marketing. There is a story behind these names. Lakeview Village is pretty much literal. It's Lakeview Village. It's like the commercial. Downtown Woodframe, heading north to 725 per square foot. Quite fascinating to see what's going on there. Go to the townhome or attached wall product. This is interesting because in other markets where affordability is an issue, townhomes represent a much bigger share of the market. This product type, in my opinion, is heavily undersupplied in the area. And some of it's because land costs are high, so it's not making sense. You know, I know that there are some coming in kind of Knox Mountain area, but it's definitely an undersupplied product type. What shocked me with it is because it's undersupplied, this product type's pricing much more mirrors what pricing of townhomes you'd see in suburban settings in Vancouver or Victoria. And what's happened in those markets is an entry-level townhome, like 1,300 square feet, used to be, you could get for $590,000 or $600. That's now $740,000 in Vancouver. And in Kelowna, it's not far behind that. It's quite fascinating. So now we're going to go around the region and have a little bit of just a look-see and then talk about some trends in that. And I'll just keep an eye on my time. So as I mentioned, you've got central Kelowna, sunny forecast up there. Now I feel like one of those weathermen. Now I'm old enough, I can remember when the weather people had to throw felt things on that board like kindergarten. So I'll pretend to do that when I talk. But so central Kelowna, sunny rating, looking to the next quarter. Again, you had the Caban success. For Cressy, you had Mission Group doing well with Aqua, you had High Rise Project Bertram, and then towards the end of the period, just squeaking it in, kind of like Berkham did last year, we had Stover's Movala. Interesting statistics to look at. The average price per, one of the statistics I look at is what I call the active sales range. That's the price, the low and high, at which 75% of the sales volume is generated. So for instance, in this neighborhood, 75% of the inventory is between $733 a square foot and $1,051. Okay. So that's quite interesting. And on a square foot basis, that's kind of 500 as a low, and it's more like 1,000 a square foot. And you can do volume kind of between $500,000 and $1 million. Low rises, you can see that that's about, 534 to 875 a square foot. There is in this neighborhood some premium low rise product, larger units. And I do think that that's something that is undersupplied in other markets, because under cost pressure and financing pressure, developers are chasing smaller units and lower prices. And if the market turns, it's going to be the downsizer who's sitting there going, where can I get my 1,200 square feet? Where can I get my 1,500 square feet? And you can see a broad range, because in central Kelowna, and this is going to change over time, but right now there's a pretty significant difference in parts of this market and right in downtown. And what you're going to see is that gap between the worst locations pricing and the best locations narrow quite a bit. And then you've got to throw new development in the future, on the old mill site, see what happens. The Mission area. So just south of central Kelowna, again, more home to kind of attached wall product. I think they could sell more there. Those are, ranging in the 900 to kind of $1 million range. Quite surprising. And they tend to be a little bit larger product out in that way in terms of townhomes. Okay, then we get to going into the Wilden market. And so this is where, again, as we start to get out, you start to see more of that attached wall product, not a lot of multifamily going on. You have Vanmar, Glen Park, sold entire projects. Blended price was about $427 a square foot. That used to be kind of, that's going to be a hard number to keep as we go forward. You can see some of the larger, older inventory at $313 a square foot sold out. And again, Carrington Homes has kind of come up with block 20 at 401. I think if they were to do that today, and don't remember that was done before, that number is probably significantly larger. Could be 440, could be 500 a square foot. We get to McKinley, fair bit of activity. And this is where you see some low-rise condominium product in terms of Acorn's Granite, and them doing relatively well with absorptions with limited supply. Pretty decent price range for that. And I think that, again, if you were to come back and look at this next summer with a new offering there, it's starting with at least an active sales range. Has probably got more like a 600 a square foot in it. An attached wall product, again, the townhomes are kind of, starting to stretch the pricing there, and McKinley's getting some traction on that product. The hillside townhomes, they're 580 a square foot. So there's my example. Get out to Lake Country, and I think that, we're this first real new activity out there other than detached homes in a long time. And you're seeing the duplexes kind of picked up some market, and Dominium's Zara low rise. Shane talked about that. I think there were about 18 homes that we were surprised moved that didn't face the lake, and they actually still were able to absorb it at, relative premiums. And again, an area where there's not a lot, particularly of townhome supply. Not a lot of supply in any of these areas. I think definitely if you've got land and you're approved and you're ready to go next summer, I think you can sleep relatively well. You just never know, what's going to happen. But you get to Highway 97, and I think you're going to see a lot more activity along Harvey coming forward. There's a number of developers looking at applications, Dilworth Mall, right? I guess not really in Highway 97 zone, but Capri, people looking up at Highway 33, because there's just not a lot of canvas to do affordable wood frame 6-story product right now on the market, in my opinion. And so those low rise active sell ranges, those are going to go. I wouldn't be surprised if across the board, we're sitting here next year and each one of those is up at least $50 a square foot, 25 to 50. Rutland, again, sort of, we liken it to different regions. It's kind of like Langford in Greater Victoria without probably the marketing momentum behind it, or it's a bit like parts of Surrey, and it has attracted Surrey investors, ironically, who get it. And again, not a lot of supply in the market, and that top end active sales range is flirting and can absorb in kind of the mid 5s to 600 a square foot for low rise condominium. Black Mountain, not a lot going on in terms of high rise or low rise. I think you might see some more activity around that at times if you could find the right canvas for it. It could be a suitable location for some downsizer product, but attached walls there, I think again, those absorption could be a lot more if they had a lot more supply. Get out to West Kelowna. And West Kelowna is a very interesting market because it's really a good example of how it's different markets. I've had more developers call us trying to buy the same couple sites that are not on the lakeside of the highway. And they think it's great and they don't know anything. And then they come up and go, wait a minute, like the numbers don't work on that particular site. So you have, West Harbor's one zone. You have, kind of the Boucherie area. Then you have, over by, the Shannon Golf Course. And then then you got Glenmore. Like it really is a mix of markets. And that's why you get the discrepancy in the active sales range from as low as condominiums at $432 a square foot all the way up to kind of $722, more like Lakeview and beyond, right? And that attached wall product, there should be more of that coming. There is more in the pipeline. And they're looking to take advantage of the fact that there's not a lot of canvas to do it elsewhere other than there. I do think what's happened with West Kelowna price increasing is that it's actually going to put pressure on Peachland to a degree. And it's funny to figure out what is Peachland, right? Like we're having this debate internally with some developers. I would take a stance that on the non-water side, and depending on where you are in Peachland, it could actually really accelerate absorptions if it positioned itself as an affordable suburb, the way that Squamish has compared to the West Vancouver, and the way that Abbotsford represents to Langley and Surrey. And I think that you could see significant more density in Peachland if they went that route. Not everything that's in Peachland, again, it's you get on the wrong side of the highway, you're dealing with noise, not particularly walkable, but I think there's a canvas there to do something more higher density. And I think that as West Kelowna prices increase, and I do expect them to for wood frame and for townhomes, I think people are going to be starting to say, well, maybe I would go to Peachland. Maybe I would, look further south than that, but I still kind of want my job base, in Kelowna. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I do think that there's more room for appreciation in West Kelowna, and that's going to put some affordability pressures on that market and push people either to the eastern part of West Kelowna, or not the eastern part, the southern part, or it's going to push them into Peachland or elsewhere. So that's kind of around the tour. We've got a couple little tweaks to do on that report, and then we'll get it out. So here's some things that I just wanted to sort of open up some dialogue, and that'll bring us to kind of the next 10 or 15 minutes. And then I think I'd love to open it up to questions. So here's some things that we're asking ourselves, right? So we don't pretend to have all the answers, but as the older I get, the more I think it's about the question as much as it is about having the answer. Do you have the right questions? What are the long-term implications of the summer like no other? I do think that we have to be very, 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 very careful about, climate and weather and fire and forestry management. I think it's a concern for people. It's less of a concern in Vancouver Island for people getting out of Vancouver. There is a significant exodus that COVID did not only accelerate, but lifestyle is changing it. And people are looking at the two big discussions I engage with a number of consumers are around of, okay, this is not the Vancouver I grew up in. I don't feel at home here. It's got nothing to do with culture, race, or anything. I want to live in a smaller center and I want less traffic. And so they're going, okay, the big dilemma is the Coke or a ferry. And I think, and then the fires and the Coke kind of became a bit of a twinned issue this summer. But people are still going to keep asking that questions. And both those markets are significantly Greater Victoria and the island up to Nanaimo, Comox Valley, and the Okanagan, including a spread south down to the Okanagan and to Vernon, are definitely good places to be for development, because the long-term projection is people want to be here. We may not have the same summer this next year that we had this year, but we might. It'll be interesting to see, but I do think it will be a positive summer. And generally, when we saw the last peak in the market across BC around 2017, 18 was less. It was still a really strong year. And then what happened was the government interventions sort of did quell demand quite a bit in 2019, plus some other issues. I see a question there, so let's see if we can pick up on that. Do I have similar data on Vernon at all? Not yet. We have it sort of privately for one developer, but our intention is to grow this report to be a regional report, not just a greater Kelowna report. So again, no summer like no other. How much of this was COVID related? I think a lot of it, as I mentioned earlier, was COVID related in terms of different things. Workers agreeing that their staff could work remotely. And I think some of that we're going to come back into more of a hybrid world. But out of our 24 staff at Epic and our 50 staff at Fifth Avenue and our 25 or 30 staff at the Condo Group and our downtown Vancouver Baker Worth staff of probably 20 people, I would say 65 to 70% of the people are working remote still. So Kelowna is going to be an option. Nope, another question. Okay. What do we see happening if interest rates go up? There's an interesting question. Okay, so that takes me to my next question. So I'll just finish the COVID point for a second. COVID did create accelerated market activity and dissatisfaction and a willingness for people to be able to work different way in small centers. I do not think that our volumes might adjust downward slightly because that, of the COVID long-term effect and people sort of a little bit of a wave back to where they were before in terms of working, employment, living. But I think the long-term trends for the region will overcome that for the most part. And I do think that the lack of supply will also continue to be an issue, that there's enough demand that supply can't meet, that COVID is not the absolute reason why the market's so hot. And as soon as COVID's over, the market's in trouble. Interest rates. So I'm going to jump around. How sustainable is investment demand and end user demand and interest rates is a highly correlated topic. COVID has done a couple of things. We're experiencing pretty much a pretty significant period of inflation. And I think interest rates, the big talk before COVID was we were all expecting, with stress tests and things like that, we were expecting interest rates to go up. And we were trying to assess with our developers at what price how much mortgage can people stomach and design our unit mix around that. And that's kind of gone away because interest rates have been held low and there's still a lot of inheritance going on. And that's a key point. We're still in the midst, early stages of the aging of a population and one of the largest, most significant transfers of wealth on the planet. By estimate 2 or 3 years ago, that transfer of wealth from pre-inheritance was estimated, our inheritance, at $13 trillion worldwide. So I think interest rates, are something that we need to keep an eye on. I do not believe they're going to be an issue next year because we still need to stimulate the economy coming out of COVID. But I do think the summer after, we're going to see some movement. And I think what developers need to be aware of is not so much can I make the sales, but what's my risk of completion? So that's one thing we did at One Water Street with North American Development Kirkcroft quite a bit, is we did assess and sort of pre-surveyed people. And we were trying to anticipate with COVID, are we going to have a problem when we complete this first tower? A bunch of people going to decide that they couldn't complete, didn't want to get financing, whatever. We didn't, but we decided to act strategically paranoid and really assess it. So I think each developer does need to really keep an eye on their risk, particularly around interest rate exposure and what it means for completions, not sales. I think the first big moves of interest rates won't affect sales. They'll expect completions. And if there is projected increases to 3 to 5% at some point, then I do think it will eventually affect first investment demand, then end user demand. And I think that's the key thing to remember is that almost always the investor is probably the most fickle animal in the market. And so you want to make sure that if the investor leaves the building, do you have a sustained end user base? And what I was saying to you in terms of the sales and completions in Water Street and the sale of product in the $1 million to $3 million range and $1 million to $1.5 million, we do have a sustained end user demand base. Sales and absorptions would take longer, but we do. This is not what happened to recreational real estate. We talked about that before. This renaissance of the recreational real estate did occur. But what we talked about before was that there was so much speculation and belief that everything was going to go up, and that where we all got caught was with completion risk. And I don't believe that most of the buying this summer is actually exposed right now is latent completion risk, but it could be. But I think the one is that you watch whether that investor in the previous market, let's refer to the investor demand as Elvis, okay? In Kelowna, Elvis left the building in about 2007 and really didn't tell us. We were waiting for him to come on stage until 2008. And then Elvis left the building for 7 or 8 years. In Vancouver, Elvis left the building in terms of the investor for about 12 months and then came back when Vancouver dropped lower prices downtown. This time around, Vancouver never really is only starting to recover downtown right now. The suburbs, Elvis left the building in 2008 and 9 and didn't come back to the suburban markets in Vancouver, the markets that most behave like the Okanagan, until about 3 or 4 years ago. And this time coming out of COVID, it was that investor out in the suburban markets who led the way back, and then the end user. And so it's an interesting pattern, but I do recommend you keep a very close eye on investment demand. And interest rates is probably one of our biggest exposures. Right now, I think we're probably okay for 18 to 24 months because we need to stimulate the economy and we're going to have to live with the inflation behind it. But it is something to keep an eye on. Again, first to what does it do to investment demand? And then what does it do to end use demand? So hopefully that answers your question about interest rates. Now, comment on reluctance of banks to finance strata that allow short-term rentals. It's a good question. Why do we think that is? So banks generally don't like risk. And the last time they got burned, there was something, a little product type that hasn't emerged in the recreation of real estate and that we don't use. We don't use the resort real estate word a lot anymore because it was associated with a lot of failures, especially here where I'm sitting today, about to launch a high-rise at Bear Mountain that's built like 1151 on an old parkade that had to be remediated of a failed project. But essentially, this whole condo hotel product type, maybe some of you are familiar with it. It died. It partly died in the States because of law class action suits, and a group organized in the States to get litigious, and they called themselves, and this is where I love that they organized it because they felt they were being screwed by the product type and couldn't get financing on it, but I did think their name was a bit comical. Their name was Nacho, the National Association of Condo Hotel Owners. And I think most banks, generally, if you're working in Toronto for a major bank or in Vancouver, your job, you don't get rewarded for taking big risks. I think you get rewarded by being conservative and not losing the bank money. And so I think the banks associate short-term rental with the condo hotel woes. And a lot of the condo hotel people were the ones that were speculating and thought these things were going to cash flow, and they weren't. Recreational real estate was never intended to cash flow. It was originally based to say, hey, you want to buy a place on the lake. You can't use it all the time, and you want someone to help you pay for it when you don't use it by renting it for a week or two, but it's not going to cash flow. And I think what the banks are worried about is investors buying these, thinking short-term rentals are going to cash flow, finding out they don't cash flow, and then they default on their mortgage. Because essentially that's what the bank's worried about, right? Is about default. So I think they don't understand or believe in the rental numbers, but given the lack of supply, I don't know that necessarily that's totally rational. Okay. So how's it like the region? How is it different? Kelowna is amazing. I've spent a fair chunk of my life here. This will probably be the region that I die in. I've always had it's just good for my soul. I don't know why. It's an emotional thing, and I'm not the only one. So I think Kelowna everybody's special, but I think Kelowna is particularly special. But why it's really special is it's the emergence of kind of this, in states they call them these kind of second tier size-wise, first tier lifestyle-wise cities. So Charleston, Austin, although Austin's getting too big. Kelowna has a cool factor, a hip factor, it has a resort factor, it's great for young people, it's great for older people, it's got an airport, it's got growing entrepreneurialism. I think Kelowna is just kind of the bomb, and it's at the tipping point. So I think that's where it's unique, is that those factors, you're seeing a little bit of that in Langford and Greater Victoria. But how it's like other regions in the BC, look, there's no supply. You have municipalities that are hard to work with, except for the odd exception like Langford. You have same kind of cost issues, and sometimes they're exacerbated. It costs more to develop condominiums, and Leonard could correct me, but I think it costs more to develop a high-rise condominium or low-rise in Kelowna that does in Surrey. And so I think that we face some of those same issues regionally, politically, but I think Kelowna has a uniqueness around this kind of second tier size, first tier lifestyle, medium-sized city in Canada. And that's going to continue to drive it, but that will spill over into what I'll talk about later as to what's next in terms of north and south. It will spill over. Another question we have here, do you think land prices will continue to rise or temper somewhat in 2022? I think that there's absolutely no basis. Maybe I'm a simpleton, and I've been called many things, including that, but that's okay. Does demand for land exceed supply? It's that simple. Yes, it does. And there's more interest coming from Vancouver to buy sites. And the people from Vancouver, just like when they buy our real estate, their perception of value and what a deal is greater than a developer locally who says that doesn't make any sense. So given the competition for sites and the lack of sites, land prices aren't going down. And I do not see them going down at all in the foreseeable future. I also think they're going to go up significantly in Penticton, and not quite as significantly, but meaningfully in probably outside the region in the Thompson and Kamloops, but I think they're going to go up in Vernon. So I think that, trying to tie up land and be able to sit on it and put yourself in a position where you can afford to do that so that you can wait to develop, it's not a bad strategy. The other thing, I'm just mindful of our time here. Okay. Where will there be one fall? Will there only be one fall, winter like 2020, 21? I think there will be. I think we're coming into a market where there's less seasonality than there used to be. And used to be, you never wanted to start sales or really rely on sales in October and November in Kelowna. And that's not so much the case anymore. But I do think that last year's sales, and don't panic when this happens. When we report next March that sales in the winter were a third less than what they were in 2021, don't panic. It means that A, the seasonal demand is going to get bigger every year, the summer demand. And B, that's actually a really good number. Just don't compare it to an outlier. Last summer, I'm willing to be wrong. I hope I am. And I'm not negative at all about the winter market, but I am saying, okay, I think there's a bit of an outlier factor in 2021 for winter. So don't get too freaked out if you see that absorptions and prices ain't falling, but if absorptions aren't as high as they were in 2020, 21, in 2021, 22 winter, don't worry about it. Watch for what happens early in May. Your leading indicator will be how quick does the sales market turn on in April and May? And is someone launching and successfully launching? Because then guess what? It's on. There's no summer like 2021, but 2022 could still be the bomb. Q&A, construction costs, challenges, and expectations. Need a little bit more clarification on what you're driving at there. I think what you're talking about, Tim, is two things. A, there's a reality, and B, how much are developers trying to hedge those by trying to charge more right now so they don't get caught. And it's an ongoing conversation. Like what I found in life, who the hell am I to share this, but you know, I've had enough hard circumstances selling real estate globally, and I'm fascinated by it. I do not think I have all the answers, but I'm still learning about this business every freaking day. It's one of the things I love about it. It's kind of like, I don't like to refer to it as a game because it deals with housing and that's people's lives, but it certainly is fascinating. And what I see with that, there's so many moving parts. There's politics and there's marketing and all that. And I think everybody thinks that we as marketers, our big job is just to kind of show up and sell stuff. They don't realize that we're often involved in creating the product. And most of our listings we've been working on for 18 to 24 months before we ever see light of day with signage or sales. And so with that, our job for our clients is to help them generate the maximum revenue. Of course it is. But the private part of our job is to help them mitigate risk. And I think one of those risks that we have to help our developers mitigate to a degree is trying to project where costs will be, because I haven't seen it happen very often, but it happened in Victoria and it happened in Vancouver or in Surrey. Two things happened. In Surrey, other than Phil Milroy, who's going to probably come back to life at some point with that project, 2 projects were canceled during COVID, 2 significant projects. One was to do with hotel financing, and the other to do with cost of construction. They made significant pre-sales, got into their costing for a construction building, and had to politely go back and give everybody their money back. This was in Victoria, and they're redesigning the project as a wood frame. They're going to bring it back at about 150 to 200 bucks a square foot less and give those first people who bought first opportunity. But they got caught when they started getting hard costs. We used to, back in the day, never write our sales till we had 90% working drawings, so we had a sense of cost. I don't think we can wait to do that in this market, but it's an ongoing conversation how to mitigate risk. Okay. So here's an interesting question. With Kelowna being less encouraging towards single detached development, and that is true in my opinion, West Kelowna is an obvious benefactor. Yeah, it is. There's probably, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 potential homes of some sort that could in the planning pipeline, including Peachland. You know, close to Ardo, but beyond West Kelowna, is there any data you collected to suggest Vernon, Armstrong, or Penticton Summerland is going to be the biggest benefactor of the spillover? I actually think two sides of it. We're collecting some early data, but I think the data that's troubling is this generation coming up, they aren't willing to be what my grandparents were, cash rich and lifestyle poor. Right? We own our own house. Everything's in savings. We don't go out for dinner. We cook it at home. Why would you go to dinner? Once in a while, we'll get a burger and a shake. This generation wants it all. So I don't think that people are moving up from the lower mainland. They might want a single family house. So there will be more demand. And I do think that Summerland and Penticton will benefit for sure. And I do think Peachland could benefit. But I think if to answer my last question, what's next? Where's next? Folks, we could be sitting here next summer saying there's no summer like this summer, and we're talking about Penticton. I think Penticton, both from a multifamily perspective and a housing perspective, is next, and it is going to be on. And some of it's going to be people going, okay, downtown Kelowna, $1,000 a square foot. What else you got, right? And Penticton, I'm watching it. Penticton feels this summer like Kelowna felt 4 or 5 summers. The craft beer scene, the restaurant scene, townhomes selling with downsizers, not on the lake, on the river, over $1 million with elevators in them. So definitely Penticton is on. It's still anecdotal to a degree, other than some absorptions on a couple projects. Penticton was supposed to have 2 big multifamily launches this summer that got stuck in approvals or delays. Those would have been the bellwether to say, okay, yep, Penticton's on. So there's not a lot of data. There's some anecdotal, but I don't think when we're talking next summer, we're going to be talking about anecdotal. Okay. So biggest threats, risks to sustained market activity. I think the biggest opportunity is continued interest in the region, and immigration is going to come into Vancouver, and it's including the people already in the queue, and it's going to drive prices up further in Vancouver, and they're affordable. Do you know that right now in downtown Vancouver, to make sense, our sister company is marketing the world's largest passive house tower, 60 some stories by Tom Wright, who did the Burj Dubai. And to make the numbers work, you have to be at $2,400 a square foot sales price. So if Vancouver goes to 3,000 and less development, more rental, those people get pushed out to Surrey, which is now 1,000. People get pushed out to Langley, and people start going, I can't live here anymore. So give me Vernon, give me your Penticton, give me your Kamloops, might even give me your Merritt. So if you're in a UDI Okanagan developer, this is not 2008 to 2013. This is on. This is sustained. Yeah, guess what? We're going to have periods of volatility. We might have 3 months we don't sell anything. But over the next 10 years, I'd put my money in this region any day. Okay. And the Kamloops market. Kamloops is probably like Penticton to a degree. If you were designing a tower, hint, we did. It's shocking when you do all the research independently and you come up with a unit mix for Penticton, and it mirrors Kelowna less and more Kamloops. Kamloops has significant downtown development. Kamloops is a quiet, sleepy market, more of a regional play. But I think with an aging population and people wanting to come from the Thompson to that, Kamloops has similar growth. I think it'll be a little bit behind Penticton in terms of pricing, but I think its absorptions are going to pick up. And, you know, it's a multifaceted market. It's just a challenging place because it's kind of like if you took Calgary and plunked it into BC in the Okanagan, in that Calgary's so spread out because of its geography and some of its rules about how close you can build things. Kamloops is really a mismatch, and they're downtown. This one tower that Kelson Group is going to bring together, 6-story wood frames, retail, everything. That'll be a defining downtown center project, kind of like, you know, Sunset, One Water, and all that have sort of created a neighborhood. So Kamloops, definitely got my eyes on it. There are similarities to the Thompson Okanagan, but there also is a uniqueness to the Okanagan that ain't the Thompson. So biggest risks, I would say, are probably interest rates. You got global issues that could potentially happen. You know, that the reality is that I don't want to freak anybody out, but I don't think that our biggest risk is from within. I think our biggest risk is still probably some type of global financial economic collapse, and I don't know when that's going to happen. But I think like the last time in 2008, that's probably our biggest exposure. And look, 2 kind of closing comments. 3. One is, thank you for the opportunity to share with you and let me run my mouth and share some data. I do love this stuff. I'm very fortunate, I guess, that I actually love talking about this stuff. I don't get stressed by it because it's just kind of what we do, and we all do it. We're all fascinated by it. And you all, I'll tell you what, the local competition in Kelowna is on par with any city I've worked in worldwide. Hats off to Mission Group. Hats off to the newbies on the street with One Water Street. Hats off to Kirkhoff. Hats off to, like, you know, Edgecombe, everybody. Like, you guys bring it, you put pretty good product on the market. So that's one thing. The other one is, look, what we tell our clients all the time is, I'm pretty certain about today. I'm pretty certain about tomorrow, but not as much. Next day, not so sure. So the point is, we're managing risk. We need to think through scenarios and how we would manage risk because we don't have a lot of certainty. But don't worry about things you can't control. If there's a global economic collapse, we'll figure it out. But I think it's more that kind of outlier thing, whereas otherwise, and I don't think that's happening in the next 3 to 5, but I think at some point you just kind of have to look at it. But right now, I think we've got 2020. I'm very optimistic about 2022. And I want to make sure that the staff and Shane and the team at Epic are supported to provide great service. And I want to make sure all of the people that work with us in some way, shape, or fashion in BC are, my term for the year is we, not I, not me, we, which stands for we collaborating, sharing, and doing things like this and helping each other. And having an Olympic competition where we challenge each other, even our competitors, to do better as opposed to run each other down. And we also stands for being wholly engaged in what we're doing. So thank you. Questions?
Awesome. Thanks very much, Scott. It was good to be able to get through a number of questions through the Q&A, so we can, you know, wait a moment to see if any of the other ones come through. But just great to have, obviously, in our industry, if you're not an optimist, you won't have a very long career.
Well
I've
said.
been told that from a couple of my mentors as well.
We poll these developers all the time, call it developer sentiment polls, and the most frequent one that I like is cautiously optimistic.
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I share the same sentiments as you. Again, inherently biased, both being from here and the work that we do at our company. But there's something very unique about Kelowna. It's an amazing place to be, no matter the stage of life that you're in. And we should all count ourselves very fortunate to be able to do what we do in the city that we love.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, thanks for your time, Scott. I really appreciate it. I just want to remind everybody that we will be sending through a recording of this on our website. And I also know that Scott, through the UDI office, will be sending through the on the mark report that you guys put together, which is great value for us in the industry. The other thing I wanted to share, it's actually an exciting thing, is we're going to have an in-person event. We're going to have an in-person event the first week of November. I believe it's November 5th at 4:30 to 6:30 at Summerhill Winery. It's quasi outdoor, but it's covered, and they'll be heated as well. Jennifer has sent through an invite or an event notice. There's only 100 spaces that are available, and so like some of these other sales that you've been talking about, Scott, there's a huge amount of demand. And we're going to be having some beverages and some food. And honestly, it's just a social opportunity because there won't be any sort of agenda. It will be great to be able to meet as an industry again together. So we're very much looking forward to that. That's a nice thing to maybe get a little bit of sense of normalcy in our industry. So I'm not sure if you'll be in town, Scott, but I'm happy to hold a ticket for you if you are. And I'd love to see everybody there.
Do hold the ticket for me. And I personally, one of the things I like about what I miss about because of COVID is being together with industry people and enjoying a beverage or two. What I don't miss is having to do these at a banquet and sit there and eat a bunch of chicken I don't really want. So this is good. All right.
Awesome. Don't disagree. Okay, well, thanks again, Scott. Thanks to everybody who joined our webinar today. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks again.
My pleasure, everyone. Take care. Stay healthy.